Mr. Trump said the first thing China will do is terminate all ice hockey being played in Canada and permanently eliminate the Stanley Cup. Any comments on that?
I don't understand why he's saying that, but he, of course, sometimes we think that it doesn't make sense. Sometimes he insists. So we have to be careful, but at the same time, of course, I don't see why and how we can stop the Stanley Cup in Canada.
Okay, that's Francois Legault reacting to part of Donald Trump's post last night on social media, warning that Canada, because it's going to do a trade deal with China, will somehow end up losing hockey, and they'll take away the Stanley Cup. I'm not sure what we expected to hear from the Premier, but there you go. James Mennie over at the Montreal Gazette. Jim, just real quick on this whole situation, it's hard to try to attach any kind of, I don't know what, normalcy to this. I mean, he's going on about a bridge, a deal that was already done, doesn't know the facts, as Judy Trin just explained just before the news, and then goes off with this sidebar on Canada and China and hockey.
Yeah.
What do you make of any of this?
Well, the thing is, Aaron, here's the Premier of Quebec kind of chuckling over what Donald Trump has to say. Most people do. I don't know. Maybe Mark Carney chuckled a bit when he was talking to Trump about this whole issue. I got to tell you, it's time we stop chuckling about Donald Trump. The first thing I noticed last night when this whole thing broke, the story broke, and I'm going to make the confession straight out, and I would like you to answer the question honestly as well. Up until this story broke, had you ever heard of the Gordie Howe Bridge?
Originally, yeah. I mean, 7 years ago when they started on this, I guess.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, you're better than me, because I thought when I first saw the tweet, when I saw the headline, like, he's going to block the Ambassador Bridge. He's completely lost his mind. But then it occurred, why has this happened? As I've always said on the show, the fundamental question for me on any story is why? Why? Why now? Why this particular approach?
Yeah.
Well, what happened yesterday? The final installment of the Epstein files, unredacted, well, mostly unredacted, were made public. And right now, if you go on stories that you won't be seeing, it doesn't mean they're not happening. You just won't be seeing them in the very well-trained stenographers who represent American mainstream media for Donald Trump. You've got Republican senators and you've got Republican Congress people turning around saying, this does not look good, and I want to find out more about this, and I want to find out more about how this Republican Party is involved. Right now, the big story in the U.S., the biggest political story in the U.S. is the Epstein files and what involvement the Republican Party and indeed the Office of the White House would have with those files. And it's amazing because every time we have a new development, there seems to be some crisis that happens. Today, with us, it's the Gordie Howe Bridge. By the way, in case that was going to peter out, in case people are spending too much time chuckling, did you see this afternoon? Benjamin Netanyahu, who's got some really recent intelligence about Iran, he's bringing it to Trump's attention right now. Thank goodness we have a battle fleet, in the Straits, ready to go in there if necessary. It's downright scary, and I got to tell you, it's not coincidence, buddy. Every time the files get closer to Trump, he finds, or his office finds, some new distraction. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, be prepared for more over the course of this week. Be prepared for more blockbusters. But once again, don't be prepared for scoops about the files themselves. You're not going to read them in American media. But once again, the other reason Trump is sweating bullets, as I'm sure our listeners are aware, a lot of these files are making their way out to the rest of the world,
right,
to governments that don't have any problem about investigating allegations and naming names. And this is what's scaring the hell out of Donald Trump and people like, say, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, who once told a congressional hearing, I hate this guy Epstein. I never want to have anything to do with him. I haven't seen him. And then says, we had lunch when I was cruising by his island. But my family and my kids were there. So, yeah, that happened. Give me a break. But like I say, Aaron, I hate to say it this way, but I think there's nothing more to it than that. And I think that, as I said earlier, I don't think, it's realistic to think that the increasingly mush-brained Donald Trump will be giving us anything resembling a trade deal or any other kind of deal. I think the only thing we can expect from this administration are more deranged social media posts. And in the meantime, we have to ask ourselves, how long is this going to last? Not before we do something, because I think Carney's got the right strategy here. How long before the Americans do something? Or, as I've suggested in the past, is despite their protestations, this isn't who we are. This is exactly who you are, and you don't care.
All right, let me move this closer to home. We heard, first of all, from the mayor today. You remember she talked during the election campaign, right, about bike paths, talking about the word I used at the time was auditing. Well, today an announcement on at least 4 of them that the city is going to be considering, possibly, including the one on Mayor, which I never understood. It's a delivery zone, and there's a bike path right through the middle of it. But she's making good on the promise.
Oh, absolutely. And you can see, I saw no less than, I think, 3 announcements from cycling groups I never heard of. And indeed, the only reason I know that they're cycling groups is because the word vélo is the first half of their name. Saying, no, you can't do this. You have to have a continuous network and this and that and blah, blah, blah. Listen, a lot of Montreal's so-called bicycle path network, and this is not just Projet Montréal, but in previous administrations, because let's face it, bicycle paths at a moment donné, was very green, it was very environmental. And I can tell you from experience as a cyclist that in many cases, a cycling path in the city of Montreal, especially out in the East End, consisted of a line of yellow paint, sometimes painted along a sidewalk, Aaron.
Really?
Occasionally painted right alongside a telephone pole in the middle of the sidewalk.
Wow.
So this is where we are. So is it time for an audit? You're damn right it is. Is it time to examine the safety? And I have said in my last column ever for the Montreal Gazette, I pointed out that, the most dangerous thing that's going on out there is people are looking at Montreal as a cyclist paradise. It is anything but, because you can have all the rhetoric and you can have all the fancy, flowery phrases at the inaugurations and this and that. This is Montreal. People don't know how to cycle. People don't know how to drive. People don't know how to walk, Aaron. So you know what? Let's try and be careful here. But the fact of the matter is, we've got to sort of come to terms with the fact this is not the kind of and as you said, and quite rightly, this is not Copenhagen. Let's not try and be Copenhagen. And yes, by all means, cycle path. If you want a network of cycling paths, but cycling paths that make sense in terms of logistics, but above and beyond everything else in terms of security. And I think if that's what this administration is going to do, then, it has my blessing. Good luck with that.
Yeah, really, hats off to them if they do that.
Yeah, and it's just the idea that, we're going to put, because it always seemed to me it was like a dartboard. There was a big dartboard up in the Flaunt administration. They just showed, we're going to put a bicycle path there. We'll say, we'll get rid of all the parking, this and that. And of course, it created this real division. It created this real resentment. It created this real antipathy between motorists and cyclists, which, quite frankly, a lot of motorists are cyclists. And yet somehow we had this great divide, and we've got this kind of radical kind of, how dare you, you're a planet killer, you want to get rid of bicycle paths. No, we just want to have something that works, something that's safe, something that makes sense. And I think if Montreal can take that step towards transportation maturity, Tom, let's get on with it, because honestly, there are too many white bicycles, too many white sneakers in this town, memorials for people who have been hit by vehicles, and I think that's something that we really have to deal with in the here and now.
Maybe crosswalks is the next way to go. I mean, those are just like, good luck. You want to take your life in your hands, try going through one of those. And I know the city said they try a couple of them and light them up. I live near one of those.
The closest I ever came to being hit by a car in Montreal was using a crosswalk on Peel Street.
Yeah. Let's hope that's the next thing they take a look at. Jim, talk to me about Jean-François Auberge. I had someone on from the Quebec Bar. We talked about this yesterday and what they're asking the minister to do. He didn't waste any time saying, this is not going to work.
It's not going to work, and that's for Bill 21. Oh, by the way, even though he supports Christine Fréchette as leader of the CAQ, she has kind of done him a little dirty this afternoon, because she thinks that the Programme Expérience Québécois, which he killed in November, should be reactivated, because there is a growing chorus, not just from the usual suspects, not just from the opposition, not just from, say, immigrant rights groups, but from the people in the regions, from people in Quebec who absolutely depend on the essential services that are provided, not just in the healthcare system, not just in the education system, but also in the manufacturing sector as well. And when you've got, it's so funny to hear Bernard Dranville, father of the Charter of Quebec Values, was up in I think he was up in Shawinigan, saying, they're here, they're in our schools. They decided to take their spend their lives with us, and we shouldn't take that lightly. So it's kind of interesting to see how the closer you get to Election Day, the one party in Quebec, well, not one, but certainly the foremost party in Quebec that really was fueled by xenophobia, by fear of the other, by blaming immigrants for everything, all of a sudden wants to be warm and fuzzy, as if that's going to stop them from being drop-kicked out of office this October. But, we'll see what happens. But it's kind of like this huge, slow-motion political car crash, which, as far as I'm concerned, it couldn't be happening to a nicer bunch of people.
Jim, before I let you go, I asked the question today based on a story, and I wanted to do this last week and just didn't get around to it. So we are now, according to a retired General Wayne Eyre, he brought up the idea of Canada. You know what? Let's be realistic. Let's realize, that the world has changed geopolitically. Things are different. And the idea of exploring Canada with the nuclear option is something we should consider. What? Okay.
Yeah, you know what? Here's the thing. That's the equivalent of if your neighbor is giving you a hard time, you decide, I'll wait in the middle of the night, I'll dig a big hole in his backyard, and I'll put 40 tons of TNT in the back, and I'll activate it. Because let's face it, the United States could be our adversary. We're right next door. Nuclear weapons are fine if you're far away. If you can turn around and say, I'll push a button, and I'll see little mushroom clouds on the far side of the world. We're a little too close for that. And quite frankly, at this point, I think there isn't anybody who doesn't realize that the only reason nuclear weapons exist is for the whole concept of mutually agreed destruction. In other words, if you come after us, we'll come after you. So they never get used. So why we have to have more chips on the table, especially for Canada, is absolutely beyond me.
James Mennie, the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
I'm Dylan Playfair.
And I'm Tyler Smith.
We're putting loneliness in the penalty box by talking to some of our favorite athletes about the importance of friendship.
This is Bromance.
Bromance is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian-owned and operated. Charm has been part of your love stories and bromances for over 50 years.
And you can find Bromance on the iHeartRadio network or wherever you get your podcasts.